Good morning, meteorologist James Olive here with Dynamic Weather Agency LLC, giving you kind of your Thanksgiving week and your Thanksgiving Day forecast. As we move on into Thanksgiving, we'll see our atmospheric river event begin to redevelop across the Pacific Northwest. Now, this area has been hit hard with precipitation over the past couple of weeks, leading to flooding and mudslides across the area, along with leaving one woman dead in British Columbia with others missing, and even the Coast Guard rescuing hundreds of people across parts of Washington State, where states of emergency were issued due to some of the heavy rainfall and the flood waters across that area. We'll also see this kind of weird trough axis across parts of the northern plains all the way down to basically the Baja Valley region, basically bringing cooler air and some storms and precipitation ahead of that trough. We'll have this little coastal storm system off the northeast and this big blocking high across parts of the northern Atlantic. Now, taking a look at our basically what we were talking about in yesterday's video, we're talking about that 1-2 punch of basically some cold air. As this loop goes back again, we'll see that first trough axis. That's what we saw, that cold front that pushed on through yesterday, bringing cooler conditions that we're seeing this morning as we take a look at our morning temperatures, followed by a little bit of ridging across the eastern portion and central portion of the United States, bringing some warm conditions back. But then as we take a look at this loop again, as it goes on through one more time, right behind that ridge right there, warm conditions, we'll see another trough axis move on in, bringing another round of cooler air to start off our Thanksgiving week. Now, taking a look at our temperatures this morning, many locations below 30 degrees this morning and below freezing to, and matter of fact, below 32 degrees this morning. That cool air is spilling all the way down to New Mexico, into Oklahoma, all the way into Arkansas, even into northern parts of Mississippi and Alabama this morning, all feeling the effects of that cool air. Most of that warm air this morning is right along the Gulf Coast, even into the Carolinas and of course across parts of Florida. Now, as we take a look at our temperatures this morning, this is the temperature anomaly from the European model for about 7 a.m. this morning. Take a look at what the temperatures are expected to be around 7 a.m. this morning. Anywhere from 5 to even 10 degrees below average for many locations across parts of the Great Lakes, into the Tennessee Valley, all the way down to parts of the Mississippi Valley region and the Gulf Coast area, seeing temperatures well below average this morning, with some areas near 15 degrees below average in parts of Illinois, where you see some of those brighter green values in there. So some cool air behind that frontal system. But like I said, this isn't going to stay around for long. We'll see some more zonal flow, a little bit of ridging develop across the area, bringing some of the warm conditions back to the Four Corners region, the central portion of the United States, across the Great Plains, all the way back into the Ohio Valley. Taking a look at our, our temperature anomalies at 850 millibars by the time we get into Saturday. This is Saturday morning at about 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so basically 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. That warm air does start to advect its way back in. Above average temperatures are expected for much of the southwest into the central portion of the United States, all the way back up into the Great Lakes. Again, like we said, that warm air isn't even going to stick around for long either, because as we take a look again back at British Columbia and Alberta, that is our next system right there. That's going to be our next clipper system, bringing in some really cold air back behind us, bringing in probably some of the coolest air of the season yet. Now, let's take a look at what's going to be happening again. Like we said, we had that 1-2 punch. We had that first system push on out, ridging across the central portion of the United States, and we take a look again back at Alberta. We have that deep trough axis pushing on into the Great Lakes, to the Mid-Atlantic, all the way towards the southeast and even into parts of the northeast, bringing some really cool conditions with a ridge developing behind that with a quick warm-up. So we're going to see these really big temperature swings as we go in to Thanksgiving week and Thanksgiving Day. Take a look at our 850 millibar temperatures anomalies. Again, we've got that cold air across the area today, warmer conditions coming back on in, and then that funneling of that really cold, almost Arctic air to some regions, pushing its way into the Great Lakes, the Mid-Atlantic, the Southeast, and even into the Northeast. As I mentioned, this could be some of the coolest conditions of the year. Like I said, taking a look here at our thickness values, this is 1,000 to 500 millibar thickness, and this can tell us a little bit about what type of air masses we are seeing, whether or not we're seeing a tropical air mass, a modified polar air mass, a polar air mass, or a Arctic air mass. Now, taking a look at some of our thickness values, typically basically 570 decameters is indicating more of a tropical air mass. 570 decameters is a tropical air mass. As we get to our 530 540, decameter line. That's indicated here by that blue line, indicating the differences between our yellows and our greens right here. That is our rain snow line right there. Basically, if you're under that 540 decameter line in those yellows, expect rain. If you're in those greens above 540 decameters, that's when you're starting to expect some snow. Now, as we start getting into 528, 510 decameters, depending on who you ask, what agency, NWS and a lot of scholarly papers indicate 510 decameters is your Arctic air mass. Now, if we take a look at that, that means parts of northern Minnesota could see some Arctic air as we get into Sunday into Monday, as that cool air begins to spill on in with that clipper system on the backside of that area of low pressure, as that polar high pressure system begins to dig southward into the region. Now, if you ask the DoD, 528 decameters would be indicating an Arctic air mass, and if we was to loop this, that would mean that much of the Great Lakes region, even into parts of the Northeast, as this trough axis continues to dig south and eastward, would be considered under an Arctic air mass. Now, I'm more considering mainly only parts of the northern Minnesota will be seeing a Arctic air mass, because I go more by the NWS and those scholarly papers based off the thickness of our atmosphere with that, and the temperatures and the moisture content in our atmosphere. Here's our overall temperature pattern for the next 5 days. So this is the day 0 through 5 temperature anomaly. We're going to see ridging across the western United States, bringing those above average temperatures, and deep troughing across the eastern portion of the United States. We had that cold front push through yesterday, and we have that second blast of cold air moving on in to start off next week, bringing those below average temperatures along with that big blocking high and ridge across parts of Labrador, bringing some warmer conditions across there. And this is going to stick around just a little bit, especially across parts of the northern plains, upper Midwest area into the Ohio Valley. We'll still see some of those temperatures continue across that area for our day 5 through 10. Now, taking a look at our day 6 through 10 temperature outlook, cooler temperatures for the eastern half, warmer across the western half, and we keep that as we move on into our day 8 through 14 temperature outlook by the Climate Prediction Center, ridging developing across the west and still keeping some of those cooler conditions across the east coast. Now, for precipitation, taking a look at the Pacific Northwest, like we said, that atmospheric river event's going to be kicking back on up, bringing some more moisture and precipitation to the Pacific Northwest along with those mountain snow conditions. Here we are looking out 240 hours on the European model, all the way out to basically the end of day on the 28th. We can see what conditions are definitely going to be possible across the Pacific Northwest as that atmospheric river event begins to develop. Not only is it going to be wet across the Pacific Northwest, it's also going to be snowy, especially across parts of the Olympic Mountains, the Cascades, the Northern Rockies, even all the way down into the Central Rockies region, where we'll see a lot of snow in the higher elevations where those cooler temperatures are going to be located. Now, taking a look at our day 6 through 10 precipitation outlook, wetter conditions across parts of the Pacific Northwest, even across parts of the Gulf Coast region, even into the southern Mississippi Valley area. We'll see some wetter conditions on over there, drier across the Four Corners region, where we've already seen a very dry summer. Drought conditions already occurring on there, and this is going to help make it worse. Drier conditions for the Great Lakes region, and I'll continue across parts of the areas for day 8 through 14, especially across the Pacific Northwest, where we'll continue to see those wetter than normal conditions with that atmospheric river, and that's expected to continue as we move on through even into December. Now, taking a look at temperatures, here's our low temperatures for starting off on Sunday. Still see those cool conditions across the eastern portion of the United States, but that warming trend across parts of the western half and central portion of the United States. Now, here we are for our maximum temperatures. Like we said, that warm air is going to redevelop across parts of the Four Corners, across the central portion of the United States, moving on into the Midwest. Here we are for our minimum temperatures on Sunday, starting to see some of that cooler air moving into the northern plains as we take a look at our maximum temperatures for Sunday. And that will still, like we said, continue to push its way southward across the area. Here we are for our lows on Monday, and here we are for our highs on Monday. As we take a look at our graph right here, you can see those blue colors indicating anywhere from 10 to almost 20 degrees below average. We see some of those hints of purples begin to show up in there across parts of the Kentucky, Ohio Valley region, where we have some really cold air beginning to spill on in. Here we are for our lows on Tuesday. And here we are for our highs on Tuesday. All right, seeing some of that warmer air moving on back into the Central Plains. Like I said, we're going to see these, temperature swings for quite some time. Here we are into the Appalachia area. near 15 to 20 degrees below average. We also start seeing some of those cooler temperatures across parts of the Carolinas, down towards Savannah and Jacksonville. Taking a look at our low temperatures as we get into Wednesday. Our highs for Wednesday, starting to see another push of cooler air. Here we are for our lows on Thursday and our highs on Thursday. So again, we're going to see these constant temperature swings as we continue throughout the week. Taking a look at the European model, now we do have this broad area of low pressure across parts of the Pacific Northwest today, bringing some showers, mountain snow conditions across parts of the Pacific Northwest, cold fronts draped across parts of the East Coast, with some lake effect snow conditions still occurring across parts of the Great Lakes today. Now, as we continue on through time, we'll still see some of that precipitation occur across parts of the Pacific Northwest. We have high pressure diving in, following that greatest area of cold air advection, moving on into parts of the Ohio Valley. As we take a look at our pressure contour here, we have a nice polar high pressure cell over parts of the Ohio Valley of 1,032 millibars across the area. Taking a look again at the Pacific Northwest, though, taking a look at British Columbia, that's our next system right there as we move into Saturday. We can see that system right there. That's going to be our next Alberta Clipper we'll be taking a look at. We do have a little bit of a disturbance over the Central Rockies, creating some snow across that area. Now, as we move into Sunday, we can start to see the troughing in the contours right here. Got this area of low pressure across parts of Manitoba into Western Ontario, and this cold front developing across parts of basically the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley region, stretching all the way down towards the Ozarks, is going to develop, and we'll see some snow develop on the backside of that with that greatest area of cold air advection, along with high pressure developing in parts of the northern plains. That high pressure is going to slide on in, following that greatest area of cold air advection, moving on into the central plains and then eventually into the Ohio Valley. So taking a look at this as we go into Sunday. Here we are on the 21st, Sunday in the evening. We've got this area of low pressure across Ontario, cold front draped across the Ohio Valley, down towards the Tennessee Valley, down towards the Gulf Coast states. Precipitation along and ahead of that cold front, along with some of that lake effect snow developing across Lake Superior right here. As we go into Monday morning, we'll see those lake effect snow conditions really develop across parts of Lake Michigan, even across Lake Huron, Lake Erie. As that cold front continues to slide to the south and to the east, we'll start seeing some precipitation across parts of the northeast, into the mid-Atlantic, and across parts of the southeast into the Gulf Coast region. As we continue on throughout the day, we'll see lake effect snow still continue on the backside of this low. As we go into Monday evening, heavy rain conditions across parts of basically the northeast, where we're expected to see some rain across parts of Maine, into parts of the higher elevations into Vermont and New Hampshire, where we'll see some of that heavy rain with a lot of warm air advection on the front side of this trough axis. This is why we're not going to see a lot of snow develop across parts of the northeast, typically with these systems around this time of the year. With this much cold air advection, some of these very below average temperatures, and a lot of this synoptic scale forcing, we normally get normally a big winter storm, but we have a lot of warm air advection out ahead of this system wrapping around this low. That's inhibiting some of that snow showers and precipitation across parts of the northeast. As we go into Tuesday, like we said, high pressure developing across parts of the central plains, for the most part keeping the area dry. As we go into Tuesday, we've got a little bit of a disturbance moving on into parts of the northern and central Rockies. By the time we get into midnight on Wednesday, that system will eventually eject its way over the Rockies. By the time we get into Thursday, maybe developing into an area of low pressure east of the Rockies, where we can see some snow on Thursday across parts of Colorado into Wyoming. Now, as we continue through the morning hours on Thursday, we'll see some showers and precipitation develop ahead of this trough axis, all the way from the Ozarks down back into Oklahoma, down into Texas. And I think we might see some embedded thunderstorms as we go throughout the evening across parts of Texas, maybe into extreme western Louisiana, where we have some moisture and some instability returning into the area. Some cooler air developing on the backside of this low, maybe bringing a narrow band of some mixed precipitation, some snow showers stretching from North Texas to West Oklahoma, even into Kansas, through Kansas City, up through Missouri, as this low pressure system develops. Going away a little bit as we go throughout the day. On Friday, here you are for Black Friday. Wet conditions across the Pacific Northwest, mountain snow across parts of the northern Rockies. Wet conditions all the way from Arkansas down through Louisiana and the Gulf Coast region, even maybe some scattered showers across parts of the Ohio Valley, mixed precipitation maybe across parts of Missouri with some of that cooler air developing, freezing rain and snow across parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri, with some wet conditions as we go into the evening into Saturday across parts of the southeast. And this is starting to get really far out into the model, where we're starting to see some discrepancies between the model runs. Models have been pretty consistent on kind of this system developing here in Texas, bringing some rain across parts of Oklahoma into Arkansas and Texas. There's a little bit of discrepancies on where that snow, if snow develops on the backside of this system, along with if the system is going to transition into kind of this winter storm system, bringing snow to parts of the Midwest, Great Lakes, and then eventually into the Northeast by the time we get into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday across time frame for when we get further on out into this model. So that's something we'll have to continue to look out for on the long range of this model. That is just kind of up in the air as we continue to go on out through this. So taking a look at our long range precipitation forecast. Now this is 240 hours out. I know this is a little far out, looking all the way out towards the 29th, but this is just going to give you the overall pattern of what we could see, as in where some places could see some heavier precipitation, where some places could see some lighter precipitation. Now, like we said earlier, Pacific Northwest is going to get hammered due to that atmospheric river. Now, if we do have that Thanksgiving storm system develop across parts of the basically the southern plains into the Gulf Coast region, where we're talking about on the European model some wet conditions across Oklahoma, Texas, into Arkansas. If we keep that storm track, we could see some wet conditions across parts of the southern plains into the Ozarks, the southeast, and the Tennessee Valley region, along with that area of low pressure system developing with that Clipper system. As that system rides up along the eastern coast with that warm air advection up ahead of that, we could see some wet conditions across Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, even into parts of eastern Maine, if that does verify for the most part. So that's where some of our wetter conditions can be, taking a look at the long range. Now, in yesterday's video, we did take a look at our December outlook by the Climate Prediction Center. Wetter conditions across parts of the Pacific Northwest and the Great Lakes, keeping the southern tier of the lower 48 dry. Now, as we take a look at our temperatures, now I think the CPC is doing a pretty good job here with our temperatures, indicating ridging across the western portion of the United States, maybe some troughing across the central and eastern portion of the United States, maybe some below average temperatures up here near North Dakota and Minnesota with some of those Clipper systems. But for the most part, I think the Climate Prediction Center did a pretty good job with this, with above average temperatures and some dry conditions across the Four Corners region, leading to some increased drought across that area and keeping it dry across the southern half. And this is going to play into that La Nina conditions that we still have across parts of the equatorial Pacific that we'll take a look at here again in a little bit. Now, the CFS is in pretty much agreement, drier across the southern half, wetter across the Pacific Northwest, and wetter across the Great Lakes. Now, the CFS is a little bit more aggressive on the warmer conditions across parts of the as you start getting into the northern plains, central plains, and the Great Lakes region, even into the northeast, compared to the Climate Prediction Centers. Now, I think the Climate Prediction Centers is a little bit more accurate than the CFS. I think the CFS is over exaggerating some of the temperatures because of our typical La Nina patterns. Now, like I said, we have those cooler than average temperatures across the equatorial Pacific, upwelling of cooler ocean waters across the western portions of South America, and strong easterly trade winds continuing to advect those ocean waters across the equatorial Pacific. Take a look at the Kelvin waves you can see on in here. We also have a reservoir of cool waters in the Gulf of Alaska area. Now also play into some of the cooler air that I do think that's going to happen across parts of the northern plains into the Midwest region, along with aiding and abetting that atmospheric river event, because that atmospheric river is going to develop across this basically this thermal gradient right here with our Pacific Decatur oscillation and some of the warmer ocean waters down to the south right here. Kind of shows up where that atmospheric river is going to line on up, bringing some of those wetter conditions across parts of the Pacific Northwest. Again, our current ENSO index is somewhere around negative 0.8, so moderate La Nina conditions are expected to occur, and these are going to continue to occur throughout much of the winter, not expected to reach neutral or positive conditions until by the time we get to late spring, early summer, again indicated by the and CPC forecast right here. Now, like I said, with our typical La Nina conditions, we have blocking high across parts of the Pacific with a variable jet stream, cooler air funneling into the northern plains and northern upper Midwest region, where I do believe we're going to see some cooler air. So like we said, ridging across the west, troughing across the central and eastern portion of the United States showed pretty good with that temperature contour, temperature outlook by the Climate Prediction Center. And again, models and the Climate Prediction Center and La Nina all indicate wetter conditions across parts of the Pacific Northwest, Great Lakes, drier across the southern tier. Now taking a look at the Mme forecast. I've been showing this for a little while, again for December, January, and February. Think it's still overdoing the temperatures across the southern half of the United States, extending those a little bit too far northward. But this forecast is still verifying the Climate Prediction Center, CFS, and the NMME forecast on those wetter conditions across the Pacific Northwest and Great Lakes, where we could see some increased precipitation, some increased snowfall, especially mountain snow across the Cascades and Olympic Mountains, Northern Rockies, and lake effect snow across parts of the Great Lakes.